In today's gardening lesson, we're going to learn how and why to foliar feed your container citrus in addition to your evergreens and all of your tropical plants, especially in the winter. In addition to, I'm going to give you a quick tip and trick to apply for your container plants to improve the topsoil in addition to a lot of your in-ground plantings as well, very easily, so that your plants will actually perform better for the many more years to come. Today's lesson is a part 3 of 4, where in lesson 1 we up-potted this Eureka lemon tree into the larger container. In lesson 2 we whitewashed and protected the tree trunk and also used it as a foliar spray on the entire plant. Now lesson 3 we just discussed in the intro. Lesson 4 is going to be on pest control. This 4-part lesson on container citrus is inspired by Facebook group Growing Citrus in Containers, and I'm putting their link down below in the video description as well as in the comments for your convenience. Be sure to click on it, follow them, and bring your citrus questions, share your expertise, and it's just an awesome group of well over 1,000 people that are all container citrus growers that you can network around the world. And I encourage all of you guys to join, and they truly are the inspiration, again, behind this 4-part lesson that we're going to be demonstrating here today. Also, my container citrus growing friend of many years, Al Wilcoxon of Canton, Illinois, where they've got freezing cold winters, has been successfully growing his citrus indoors during the winter using a lot of helpful tips, which you can read in his article. And I want to make sure I read this right and where you can find it. If you go to ivorganics.com and you click on the gardening advice link and you're looking for that article right near the top, which reads How to Care for Your New Citrus Trees by ALW2. And be sure to check that out. And again, for your convenience, I'll put it in the video description below as well as in the comments, so you can simply click it and it'll take you there. Be sure to read his in detail 11-page advice sheet on caring for your container citrus. With all that being said, let's get started. Hi, my name is Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Gangs, where we grow cool plants and author of Saving the World with the Home Garden. And in today's lesson, which is a 2-part lesson, the first one is on foliar feeding your plants. And for those of you that have been following the Ivory Organics YouTube channel for a while, have seen this chart where I would have on one side the fertilizers and on the other side the seasons. And this year, W for winter, SP for spring, SU for summer, F for fall, and then back to winter. And when it comes to winter, you want to feed your plants a little as the light hours are low and the activity of the plant are at its lowest point. Also, the soil being wet and cold don't absorb the nutrients as well as they do come spring. And that's when you begin to feed your plants. And kind of like breakfast, you start slow and you warm up towards a bigger lunch. And during summer times, the light hours here in LA are closer to, and hopefully I get this backwards, so 14 hours in the summer compared to in the winter. We're dealing here in LA with closer to 10. I know for sure I got that backwards, but we're gonna leave it. 10 hours in winter, spring closer to 12, by summer 14 hours of light. The plant productivity is at a maximum here, as now it's fruiting, flowering, growing, and you're going to want to make sure that when it comes to feeding your plants with a good quality organic fertilizer, that it's getting all of the nutrients necessary for optimal health and growth. As you go into fall, less feeding. By winter, it's your lowest feeding of the year. So in most parts of the country, in the wintertime, it's raining, and raining a lot. So if you're fertilizing the soil, most of it's going to end up in the runoff and leaching and finding its way into lakes, rivers, and streams. But that's not the main reason not to be feeding the soil. The main one is the fact that it's colder, the light hours are lower, the metabolism of the plant are at its lowest point. It's a great time for the soil to also leach any excess salts that may have accumulated in the soil. And just give the soil, that 3-month break during the winter months. So the main reason to not be applying fertilizers to your soil during the winter months is, again, as we talked about, the metabolism is at its lowest point. The soil is wet and cold. The uptake by the roots is at its lowest point in the year. And in fact, during the winter months, the absorption by the leaf is greater and more so than what would be accomplished by anything you would put in the soil. Hence the value of foliar feeding your plants, maybe not just once, but maybe up to 2 to 3 times during the winter months to make sure that your plant has all of the macronutrients, all of the micronutrients, which are the nutrients the plants need in smaller trace levels. The macronutrients being the elements the plants need in abundance, hence the name macro versus micro. You want to make sure the plant has all of the elements for maximum health, longevity, productivity, and so forth. So winter is an excellent time to make sure your plants have everything that they need. So going into spring, they'll bloom and set fruit and support maximum yields, depending on if it's a fruiting plant or a flowering plant. And correcting these deficiencies by spring may be too late if the bloom period is in spring. So this is an important lesson to all of your evergreens, your tropicals, and including your citrus, is to foliar feed them during the winter months to get them off to an excellent start come spring, summer, and fall next year. When selecting a fertilizer for your plants, you're going to have a choice to either select something that's an organic product or a synthetic product. And sometimes the synthetic ones are referred to as chemical, but you got to keep in mind that all things are made from chemicals, or more simply from the elements of the periodic table. More accurately, I refer to them as synthetic if they're chemical man-made products, or they're going to be defined as organic. And a couple synthetic products, and I'm not going to show you their labels, but I'm going to just take a handful of this here. And I got my gloves, but you can see these here are 2 examples of synthetic man-made products that a lot of growers use in their garden. But I'm going to share with you quickly the reason to not be using the synthetic, or aka chemical fertilizers in your home garden, or actually anywhere if you're a commercial grower as well. The first reason is that a synthetic or chemical fertilizer, even though it may have the elements that benefit your plant, is doing zero to benefit the soil biology. What's in your soil? Everybody, first thing that comes to mind that's moving and living in your soil is earthworms. So you've got beneficial earthworms that are eating, had it been organic fertilizer, eating the organic fertilizer, breaking it down into worm compost or black manure or worm gold or worm castings, however you want to call it. But the more worms you have in your soil, the benefits of worm castings are magnified multiple fold, and all of that benefit and gain is going into your plants over a sustainable long period of time, especially if you're using an organic granular fertilizer that breaks down over the course of several months, as do these Ivory Organic brand products, which I'll share in just a moment, compared to a liquid fertilizer, which you're going to have to repeat more frequently as it breaks down even faster. So that would be an application anywhere from 2 to 4 week intervals with a liquid organic fertilizer. So the synthetic products are not feeding your beneficial worms. They are not feeding your beneficial bacteria. They're not feeding the beneficial network of mycorrhiza, hyphal, roots that you've got interacting between the soil and the plant. Reason number 2, just like reason number 1, is that your synthetic fertilizers may also be harming and even potentially killing the beneficial life in your soil. So now if you've got an organic garden and you've got harmony within your garden, you're introducing these synthetic products, you may be destroying this web of life that's happening below your soil that's making your plants perform so well, and that's being taken away. And now the plant is standing alone just on these minerals that you've added to the soil, but not the beneficial life that comes with the organic gardening method. And the third reason for not using synthetic chemical fertilizers in your garden is that they accumulate in salts, and that with each application the amount of salt content in your soil goes up, in fact eventually harming and even potentially killing your prized plants. And so that's something that a lot of synthetic fertilizers will do, and there'll be a lot of warning labels being very careful in regards to dosage and the amount used, as they burn your plants more readily than the organic alternative fertilizers that could be used in your home garden significantly more safely, and to the benefit of all the things that I said the synthetic fertilizers will harm, damage, and destroy in your garden. So the organic fertilizers, again, will feed the earthworms, feed the beneficial bacteria, feed the mycorrhizal network, and offer all of that benefit and nutrition in a more sustainable and natural and healthier alternative way to gardening. When shopping for a fertilizer, whether it be synthetic or organic, virtually all fertilizers are only focused on 3 macronutrients, and those are your N and your P and your K, which stands for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. But that's only half the story. Plants have 6 macronutrients, and Ivory Organics originally branded a product called 6 Macros Plus, and now has been relabeled for 2021 as simply all-purpose NPK. Now contains azomite for added micronutrient nutrition. This 4-pound bag makes up to 120 gallons. We're going to be talking about making a liquid fertilizer shortly. Contains all the macronutrients plants need. And as you can see, it contains all the primary nutrients, which are your NPK, and also contains all of the secondary nutrients, which include calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. And there's this 4-pound bag. There's the 11.8 ounce bag. And again, contains azomite with the super blend. This one makes up to 20 gallons. And if you want to take a look at the back real quick, compared to the synthetic or that chemical fertilizer, this is made of organic ingredients, which include fish bone meal, alfalfa meal, feather meal, langbeinite, basalt, potassium sulfate, dolomite, kelp meal, and volcanic ash deposit. And that is, the volcanic ash is the azomite. So the addition of azomite, or that volcanic crushed rock, delivers a lot of the micronutrients. Just imagine those plants in Hawaii and how well they thrive on all of that micronutrient dense rock that's offering all of the elements that are important for the metabolic processes of the plant. So we've got the super blend, and then over here, the premium blend fertilizers, again in the 11.8 ounce bag. This here just simply has a lower NPK percentage, but still contains all of the primary nutrients, all of the secondary nutrients. We can turn this around as well, and you can see that the derived from is a little different with alfalfa meal, fishbone meal, langbeinite, oyster shell, basalt, feather meal, and kelp meal. Both the super and premium blend fertilizers come with extensive directions on how the products can be used. If you take a look over here, you can see there's soil directions over here, established plants for vegetables and annuals for your potted plants. And just simply over here, it says apply a tablespoon of Ivory Organic all-purpose per gallon size container, up to 5 tablespoons for a 5-gallon container, but I still wouldn't exceed 5 tablespoons every 30 days during the growing season, being, starting with spring, summer, going into early fall, and stop. And then over here, foliar feeding and compost tea, which I'm going to demonstrate shortly. To get started, we're going to right now do the foliar feed directions, which read up to 4 times a year, spring, summer, fall, and winter. Apply 1 tablespoon of Ivory Organic all-purpose per gallon of water. Let it sit for at least an hour. Mix thoroughly. Filter through a fine strainer to avoid the possibility of clogging the sprayer. Spray on upper and lower surfaces of leaves once per season. Apply it as a nutritional spray on evergreen plants in the winter. All other plants spring, summer, and early fall before the leaves fall. And then for compost tea, which we're going to be doing shortly, this is a quick sneak peek. We're going to apply 5 tablespoons of Ivory Organic all-purpose to a 5-gallon container. And it says, look at all these lessons here. Container of either rain, pond, or 3-day-old public water to let all of the gas and the chlorine, as much of that, to basically work its way out of the water. Add 5 tablespoons of sugar, preferably raw organic syrup. Sink a bubbler to the bottom of the container, as used in fish tanks, to maximize aerobic, which means oxygen loving, instead of the anaerobic, which is going to be that rotting, like sulfur smelling product that would happen without the bubbler. Organisms to thrive. After 2 to 3 days, use the solution as a drench around your favorite plants and trees. Repeat the steps every 2 to 4 weeks during the growing season, and this solution may be used for foliar feeding your plants as well. So one of the easiest and fastest ways to use the product as a liquid fertilizer, and this here is the contents of the product, so you can see that here. This here is about 2 gallons of water. If if I filled it to the very top, it would be 2 gallons. So I'm gonna take my 1 tablespoon and a half. And now I've got what's gonna become the liquid fertilizer. I'm now gonna go in with my mixer and stir well. So check out the newest addition to our citrus garden, variegated pink lemon, or as my friend Matt McGee calls it, the VPL. Leaves are striped green and cream. Fruit is slight pink flesh, year-round fruit, and just check out the variegation on these leaves. It truly looks like it's an ornamental plant, and yet it's a derivative off of the Eureka lemon, as this has the beautiful variegated leaf pattern, very similar to, for example, check out this variegated ivy. And there's a lot of variegated succulents as well, and cactus such as agave when we visited the Huntington Garden. And I'm hoping you can see that on the screen here as well. And what we're gonna do next is, with that solution that we just prepared, I'm gonna use this as its first watering. We just planted the plant just a matter of an hour or two ago. I haven't watered it in yet. I'm using this solution as both a foliar feed, in addition to, it's a very light fertilizer. As you saw, it's only a tablespoon per gallon of water compared to the general application of fertilizing your plants come spring, summer, and fall, where it would be a significantly higher dose of fertilizer on your plant. So if you take a look here at the solution, you can see that it's very well mixed in. Again, if you wanted to add it to a sprayer, I would recommend that you filter it before adding it to your sprayer so it doesn't clog the end. But now we're just gonna be foliar feeding the entire plant, as well as watering the soil. To prevent any clogging, we can just simply take off the end now and just drench. And again, this is our water and fertilizer solution at the same time. And now this here is our liquid fertilizer, very mild, which will benefit the entire soil biology, the earthworms, the beneficial bacteria, as well as the underlying mycorrhiza. You may have noticed I just shot a commercial with this plant yesterday and demonstrated where we pruned and protected a part of the grafting wound using this product, which here is the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard. We use it as a tree paste as the function over here as a brush on. If you fill up the can with water, as a foliar spray, can make up to 5 gallons of foliar spray, as well as a tree paste. And there's even directions here for the foliar spray if you want to make your own spray bottle. And what I'm going to finish doing is not just protect the pruned surfaces and the grafting wound, but I'm going to actually protect this entire exposed tree trunk like so. So as the sun rises and sets here in the garden, that this tree trunk doesn't get overexposure to sun and contribute to first, second, and third degree burns that I'll have to continuously repair, and instead can put its energy towards more growth, more flowers, more fruit, and also enjoy a longer life here in our home garden. There's also something really magical that happens to plants that have the combination of these 3 things, and that is fish plus kelp plus molasses or sugar. The combination of these 3 in fertilizers has been proven many times to offer your plants significant benefits, and both the super and premium blend fertilizers have the fish component as well as the kelp component. And now with the addition of molasses, which is the sugar component, and using it as a fertilizer, especially as a foliar spray on your plants, will help take you to another exponential level in your gardening successes. And keep that in mind. Again, fish, kelp, and sugar. So now we're gonna make a compost tea, as we read earlier, and it doesn't matter if you use the premium or the super blend fertilizer. Again, the super blend just has a higher NPK level, and it also has the added benefits of azomite. And just to show the consistency of the two, And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take 5 tablespoons. This here is of the super blend, and we're gonna add it to 5 gallons of water. So here we go with tablespoon number 1. You can see, I'll now take the premium blend, and you'll see the consistency is actually quite similar. There it is. And then we got premium blend. Since I got both of them here, that's number 3. Here's number 4. And now I'll switch back to the super blend. And that's 5. And what you're gonna wanna do next is take an organic, ideally liquid fertilizer. I'm using here the agave and the raw. I'm making sure that it's organic, so make sure that it doesn't have any added preservatives or anything else. And then we're just going to add approximately 5 tablespoons of this liquid sugar. And what this is doing is feeding the added bacteria that's in the fertilizer and gonna help it to explode in population. What we're then gonna do is add a bubbler. This here we did a couple days ago. All we did was use this Petco air pump that you'd use like in a fish tank. And here's the bubbler. And we're connected to a power source. That's why we're squished here in this narrow alley. And if we pull the bubbler out, you'll see that it's attached to a rock that's taking the bubbler to the bottom of the container and oxygenating the entire solution. And between the oxygen and the sugar and the beneficial life that's in the product, all of that's going to contribute to a population explosion of beneficials that'll then be integrated into the garden. You can also take your compost that you've got in your garden and add that, or if you've got some really good garden soil, you can add that as well to the solution. But by adding the Ivory Organic Super and Premium Blend fertilizers to your compost teas, even if you have a different method, you're gonna ensure that you've got all of the macronutrients and a lot of the additional micronutrients so that your plants have optimal health with each application of your compost tea. What I'm gonna do next is taking my spray bottle. I'm now going to take my cheesecloth and I'm going to cover it, or you can filter it if you had a larger one, but this is all that's left of a cheesecloth I was using for a different project. But I'm simply gonna do that to make sure that as the solution enters the container, that none of the larger particulates go into it. Now that we've got a full bottle, let's go and foliar feed our plants. Follow me. So you're gonna foliar feed your citrus, your evergreens, and also your tropicals, which include your avocados. And this here is another new addition to the garden, known as the Carmen Haas. The Carmen Haas avocado, unlike the Haas and a lot of avocados that only fruit once a year, this one is famous for fruiting at least twice and maybe even up to 3 times per year. Kind of similar to dragon fruits that fruit also 2 to 3 times a year. So we're excited to actually see how this one is gonna grow and ultimately fruit here in our garden. And here we are with the foliar spray. And this is an excellent way to give the plants all of the macro and micronutrients when the root's uptake is not as efficient. Last but not least, our citrus in containers. We discussed in lesson 1 the importance of uppotting your plants on average somewhere between every 3 to 5 years. If you're uppotting every year, that added stress is going to significantly take away from the success of the flowering and if fruit is the objective, the fruiting of your plants due to the additional stress. Another important reason for uppotting is to clean up any of the root-bound roots and also pruning the plant at the same time to offset that stress, and a chance to introduce some additional soil into the container that the roots can continuously grow into over the next few years. So now for the years in between where you're not uppotting the plant and you want to improve the total condition of the soil without moving the plant out of the container, what you're going to do is follow these simple steps, which you'll also find on the backside of your fertilizer. Let's read them first, and then I'm going to demonstrate it. Come in a little closer. So these soil directions, which says, to fertilize up to 3 times a year. And again, for your container plants, which are down below, it says potted, apply 1 tablespoon and up to 5 tablespoons for your 5-gallon containers, but you shouldn't really exceed 5 every 30 days during the growing season. But let's follow this, which is what we're going to apply, including for our container plants. It says, per plant, scattered around the root zone, the area under the branches, and carefully scratch the surface, not more than 1/4, with a tool to bring the fertilizer in contact with the soil. It is a good practice to also add a thin 1/4 inch layer of compost to the soil surfaces around the root zone with Ivy Organic All-Purpose. Keep fertilizer a couple of inches away from trunk. Many plants also benefit from a 2 to 4 inch top layer of wood mulch. However, maintain a distance of a few inches to several feet, depending on the size of the tree, away from the plant trunk to avoid the risk of stem rot. Water thoroughly after application. So those were quite simple and very informative instructions that you'll find on the back side of your fertilizer product. So what we're going to do now is demonstrate it on this recently uppotted plant. I don't have another potted plant to demonstrate it on that's been in its container for over a year, so we're going to be repeating this lesson on this newly planted plant, but you would typically not be doing this. I just want to add that quick disclaimer that for your plants that have been resting in container for more than a year, this is a good practice that we're going to be doing right now. One is fertilizing, but we're going to do one more step after that, which I encourage for all of you that have container plants that have been in container for more than a year. And that's basically enriching and improving the entire soil medium without the need for uppotting. If you're within that 1 to 3 and up to 5 year period of time and you're not ready to uppot, this is what we're gonna do. So step 1, we're simply gonna add some fertilizer to the topsoil. So as you can see here, I've just only very lightly fertilized the plant. Maybe a tablespoon when I could have done as many as 5 tablespoons, being that this is a 5-gallon size container. Actually, this container size is a little bit larger than a 5-gallon size container, but 5 should be about the most, even for a pot twice the size. 5 tablespoons applied every first week of every single month going to the growing season will suffice. So spring, summer, early fall. But this year I'm demonstrating, here we are now in the winter with just a very light dose of fertilizer. And then what I'm going to do is take this product, which is simply compost. I'm using this as an amend, as I don't have compost here in the garden. If you have your own compost, use it. So I'm going to reach in here and show you what the product looks like. So it's just basically a compost product that I'm adding here to the soil. And I'm only adding, as the directions read, we're only going to be adding a thin 1/4 inch layer of compost to the topsoil. I'm gonna get one more handful. And keep in mind, this compost within the next few months is also gonna break down into virtually dust. It's gonna completely disappear and not really add to the volume of soil around the plant. So we've just mulched, we've just added some fertilizer, and what we've actually done is as soon as we begin watering is we're now enriching that entire organic biology that exists in the soil, which supports the earthworms, the beneficial bacteria, and the mycorrhiza that we've already discussed at least twice in this lesson. But now, also as the directions read, we're just gonna scratch the surface about 1/4 inch. We're trying not to disrupt the surface air roots, and that's it. And now the fertilizer and that top layer of compost have been integrated, and now we're just gonna water that down. So you can imagine for your plants that have been sitting in their containers for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or more years. By doing what you've done here, what's gonna happen is with each watering, a lot of the nutrients are gonna obviously leach into the rest of the container, enriching the entire soil medium by simply improving the topsoil in your container plants. But what's also happening is, again, that soil biology, and the earthworms are gonna eat from the surface and then bring and enrich when it goes and creates its waste, that worm gold and the worm casting that waste actually enriches the soil wherever the worm travels throughout the pot. So just enriching that topsoil improves the conditions of the entire container. This is another very helpful tip, which I do at least 2, if not 3 times a year around all the citrus in my garden as well. And let me demonstrate that one more time on my in-ground plantings too. Check this out. So here we are now in the canopy of a Meyer Lemon, which is a variety of lemon that's more sweet. It's also got a very thin rind compared to the Eureka or the Lisbon variety of lemons, which are more typical to the store-bought lemons. Again, the Eureka and the Lisbon lemon are more of like the store variety of lemon, a thicker rind and more of a sour lemon. The Meyer Lemon is believed to be a cross that happened in China between a lemon and the mandarin orange. Assume the traits of the sweetness that's behind the Meyer Lemon. As you can see in the canopy of the tree, there's a 2 to 3 inch layer of wood chips that are breaking down from year to year. And all of the leaves and anything that falls down in the soil is kept here as it also breaks down, further enriching the soil. I'm pulling it back a couple of feet away from the tree as I prepare to now enrich. And you can see as I'm pulling back the wood chips, there's some air roots that are now becoming exposed. These air roots are, one, making contact with that nutrient dense and rich topsoil layer, and also these air roots are also providing oxygen to the plant as well, and hence the name air roots. But you can see there's roots that are right there at the very surface of the soil, and we want to be careful not to disrupt those, as it's important to, again, minimize and reduce stress to the overall plant. There's no reason to pull or cut or do anything to those air roots. So what we're going to do next is we're going to take some of the fertilizer here, and I'm just going to take a couple of tablespoons. I mean, for a tree this large, I can put significantly more had it been spring or summer. I'm just going to take a couple tablespoons around the plant, and what that's going to do is, again, feed that soil biology, the worms, the beneficial bacteria and mycorrhiza. And then I'm going to take the compost, or that product amend, and apply that around the tree like so. A very thin 1/4 inch layer of compost around the plant. And I'm going to take my hand tool here and gently mix those 2 ingredients together. And now we can return the wood chips back around the tree, being careful to keep the wood chips away from the tree trunk, as the wood chips absorb water, as does the bark of the tree, and we don't want the tree to end up with a phenomenon known as stem rot. So we're going to keep the wood chips away from the tree trunk and then build that up 2 to 3 inches around the root zone of the plant. And I probably did closer to 1 inch, and that's why I brought this bucket, because the wood chips do keep breaking down. I'm going to be adding another inch around both sides of the plant, and then just leveling that out like so. Once we water, and I'm going in here with my bucket, the product begins to work. And now you know how to improve the entire container soil, or even your garden soil for your in-ground plantings, by just improving the topsoil. 3 simple things: a good quality organic fertilizer, a little bit of compost, and add that layer of wood chips near the top, which again break down, adding and contributing towards additional nutrients with each watering, in addition to several other benefits of mulching. And I'll just quickly add, it helps in the winter keep your soil warmer. In the summer, it helps keep your soil cooler. It's also going to help suppress weeds and save you a lot of time that way. And so a lot of benefits come with that method of improving the topsoil for your container and in-ground plants. If you've learned something new today, which I hope you have, be sure to give us that thumbs up, and most importantly, share these lessons with your gardening friends and family. Also, if this is your first time here, be sure to subscribe and click on that push bell notification to stay connected with each of these gardening lessons that we share. As always, keep growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.